One question that I get asked all the time is it stressful to travel with your pet? And I think that this question is really subjective and dependent on the type of traveler that you are. Hello, fellow traveler friends, world wanderers, and globetrotters. My name is Emma. Now, obviously, a lot of these tips that I'm going to be sharing are going to be best applied to the fact that I'm traveling with a really small dog. So if you're traveling with a larger pet, some of these tips won't completely apply to you, but I still think that some of these things that I'm going to share in this video are definitely going to be helpful. The very first thing that I like to recommend for you if you're looking to travel with your pet is to do your research. Figure out what the requirements are for you to bring your pet to whatever country it is that you're looking to travel to. These requirements are obviously going to differ from country to country, and the earlier you start this research process, the easier your life is going to be. I'm Canadian, so a lot of the research that I've done has been for specifically pets that are traveling from Canada to whatever country it is. This is going to differ, of course, depending on where you're traveling from and where you're traveling to, so make sure that you figure this stuff out. Now, a great place to start is by emailing the embassy of the country that you're planning on visiting, because typically consulates either have that information on hand or they can point you in the right direction. And at the end of this video, I'll share some specific details that are going to be best suited for you if you're thinking of coming to Colombia, because that's where we are right now. Things can come up out of nowhere. Me, for example, when we were planning our trip to Panama last summer, I had to jump through so many hoops to get this dog's paperwork approved to enter the country. I had to get my paperwork notarized, then I had to bring it to Global Affairs Canada for certification. It costs money, it takes time, especially if you already have flights booked, hotels booked, everything planned. Thankfully, I figured it out, and I figured it out just in time, got everything approved, but I did that all through the Panama embassy that was located in Ottawa. So definitely reach out to your local embassy first and foremost. Similar to humans, you're gonna kind of need to figure out what vaccine shots your dog needs to enter that country. Typically, it's rabies. That's like the #1 thing that your dog needs to get into the country, but most importantly is the timing of those vaccine shots. Are they expired? Did you get the dog the shots within a certain period of time prior to entering the country? Really important step for traveling with your pet is figuring out what health requirements your animal is going to need to enter the country. Sometimes you also need to get your veterinary paperwork authorized by, in my case, CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which is so random. And that's what you essentially show the Colombian government, in this case Colombia, because you're essentially importing an animal into a new country. For Mexico, for example, it's really easy. There's a lot less hoops to jump through. Panama was difficult. For Colombia, for example, Rupert had to have been seen by a veterinarian within 10 days of having entered the country. So I made sure that I booked absolutely every single vet visit that I needed all in one go. Like, he needed to get a leptospirosis shot. I wanted to get him that because lepto is something that your animal can get from drinking from puddles that other wild animals have urinated in. It can make them sick, it can kill them. Also, he's really small, so I'm extra precautious in the things that could potentially really cause harm to him. So I made sure that I planned to get his lepto shots, airworthiness paperwork, which a lot of airlines typically need, a standard health certificate that you'll probably end up providing both the airline and the government of whatever country you're visiting, as well as some sort of anti-parasitic treatment. So, you know, a dewormer, tick prevention, that sort of thing. I made sure to get all of that done in one visit to the vet so that I'm not going back multiple times and having my vet bills kind of pile one on top of the other. You can get all of this done in one clean shot at your veterinarian. Some other things that countries might need is proof of your anti-parasitic treatment, a microchip, and of course, the proof of all your vaccinations and having seen a vet. So just make sure that you have that list prepared, you bring it to your veterinarian clinic, and they'll sort the rest out for you. It's really important to be tactile with this process because of the potential timeline constraints that might exist depending on the country that you're traveling to. Okay, once you've sorted all of that out, it's time to book your flights and your hotels. One thing that I always like to do is whenever I'm looking up hotels, I'll always put on that pet-friendly filter. I'll do the same thing with Airbnbs and for hostels. I'm actually staying in a hostel right now. It's pet-friendly. I usually stay in Salinas because they're also pet-friendly. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that not all airlines are the same. So when you're booking your flights, you want to make sure that you're checking with that airline what their requirements are. If they allow pets in the cabin, what size of pets, pets, what their weight is, what the carrier can look like, you know, the height, the length, the width. All of those things come into play when you're starting to book your flights. So another thing that I always really like to recommend is if you can book direct flights, do that. Even if it's a little bit more expensive, it's worth it, because trust me, it's gonna end up costing you in some way or another. Ideally with at least the same airlines, so that you're not paying multiple pet fees. When you're booking with some of these tertiary or middleman booking companies like Kiwi.com, garbage, they end up booking you with different airlines. So you then have to call all these various airlines, make sure that they allow pets, make sure that the pet is on your file, because some airlines only allow so many pets on one given aircraft. Different airlines operate using different aircraft, so they might have different baggage requirements. You know, the sizes can always be different. Take it from somebody who was a flight attendant for years. This really changes from aircraft to aircraft, airline to airline. So the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to just Google whatever airline you're flying with, Air Transat pet requirements. Pop in those keywords into Google. You'll probably find some really fabulous resources, or at the end of the day, you can give your airline a call to figure out exactly what you need to know about traveling with your pet. You'll also be able to figure out what the fee is. I actually have found it not to be all that expensive to fly with Rupert because he's small enough to come in the cabin with me. It's been roughly around $200 round trip in some cases, or even just one way. In my opinion, that's again totally worth it. It's just comes with the cost of traveling with your pet. I'm fine with it. It's really not the end of the world, but it's gonna be different for every airline. So I like to make sure that that reservation is added onto my booking so that the CSRs know what to expect when I show up, and there's no unexpected question marks of, oh, she has a pet, we didn't know she had a pet, okay, delays, and maybe you're running late, and boom, you miss your connection. Okay, so this brings me now to what I pack when traveling with my pet. I always make sure that my dog, Rupert, has a harness on. A lot of airlines actually require this if you're bringing your pet in the cabin. Also for the little guys, this is the best type of collar for them. Obviously goes without saying, you wanna have a leash. I like to even bring a backup leash in case you forget it on the beach, you leave it in a hotel. I also always have a designated pouch that I bring with me at all times that just has some essentials in it. Poop bags, treats, and some loose kibble so that I'm not just filling him up with treats for an entire travel day. I try not to feed him at least 8 hours prior to a long drive or a long flight so that he's not having any sort of like real dire emergency need to go to the bathroom. So I will like gradually feed him small bits of kibbles, small amounts of water throughout the day just to keep him sustained. But I always bring this everywhere with me. I also has a little toy in there too, just to entertain him. Other things that I bring is these collapsible water and kibble bowls. These are a must. They go flat, they're easy to clean. You can bring them to the beach, you can toss them in your bag, easy breezy. Definitely get yourself some of those. Another thing that I like to pack in his carry-on is a blanket from home. I'll usually throw this clean blanket into bed with us for a couple nights before we leave so that it really gets like my smell on it. I read this somewhere that having an article of clothing that has your scent on it really helps to keep your pet less stressed, a little bit more at ease when traveling, or if you have to leave them alone in the hotel room for any period of time, they have something that smells like you. And I've actually found that it works really well. I definitely recommend that you bring a Kong. This is a great way to stimulate your dog. If you're thinking that you're gonna travel with your pet and you're just gonna be able to leave them in the hotel room the entire time that you're out adventuring, I just think that that's the wrong mentality. It's not really worth it to then travel with your pet. You wanna be bringing them out on beach walks, on hikes, and walking around new cities. Like, it's all part of the fun. But of course there are gonna be times where you have to leave your pet alone in the hotel room, and it's fine. They're animals. They're used to being alone for at least some period of time. I try to not leave Rupert alone for longer than 4 hours. And usually that's only if I'm going out to a nice dinner where pets aren't allowed, or if I'm doing an activity that isn't best suited for dogs. And those are usually water activities. I feel a lot more comfortable leaving Rupert alone in the hotel room when he's got some toys to occupy himself with. He's got some articles of clothing that smell like me, and he has his house that he feels safe in, that he can go in, take a nap, hang out, chill. well. Another thing that I picked up is this light up collar, especially if you're gonna be out in the jungle. You wanna be able to see your pet. And if you're going for walks at night or at dusk, a light up collar is definitely a win. I would suggest it. But I definitely wanna know where this little guy is at all times because he disappears in the dark. In Panama, my biggest fear was like crocodiles or freaking anacondas coming out, snatching them. God forbid something like that were to happen. I would never recover. So far, so good. Actually, the most dangerous thing that I've noticed has honestly just been other dogs. So keep that in mind. Keep your pet on a leash, of course, unless you're traveling with a Great Dane or a German Shepherd that can fend for itself. If you've got a small dog, definitely get yourself a light up collar and a couple leashes in case you lose one. Also, as you can imagine, really freaking hot here. So make sure that you get your pet a nice little trim before you head out to the tropics because a great big winter fur coat isn't gonna suit them so well here. We ended up just giving him a clip with our beard cutter, if you will. Wouldn't recommend that you get them cut in the country that you're going to. When we were in Mexico, we got him a haircut on like week 4 of being there because his fur was just too long and they ended up cutting him. He had to get stitches. It was a friggin' nightmare. So if you can, get them groomed at your local groomer that you know and trust. Make sure that their hair is like nice and short so that they're ready for the beach. You love your little house, don't you? Another thing that I like to recommend too is when you pick up your carrier, get them used to it early. If you're going for a car ride, bring them in the car in the carrier. Associate it with a positive reinforcement. Give them treats in there. Let them know that this is a positive experience and something that they should like doing. It shouldn't feel like they're being punished by going in there or that, you know, it's a chore for them to go in there. Just make sure that you're doing it early enough. You don't want to be cramming them into this carrier the day that you're flying to Mexico. You know, you want to get them used to it at home, bring it up into your bedroom, have them sleep in it overnight if you can. Like those types of things really sets you up for success when you're traveling with your pet. Training tips that I think are really essential if you want to continue traveling with your dog on a more regular basis. So the main things that I would focus on is getting him used to traveling at a young age. And traveling doesn't necessarily have to mean getting on a plane. I would take him on car rides with me, train rides with me. I was taking him out to friends' houses, parties, not like raves or anything, but you know, dinner parties, bringing him to restaurants, you know, places where there is a lot of things going on so that it trained him to not become easily overly stimulated by these things so that he already has some experience in being brought out into these different dynamic spaces that he wasn't overly thrown off by them. So if you can, start them young. His very first trip that he went on, he was like 4 months old, and that was when we went to Panama. Now, a year later in Colombia, he's so easy to travel with. Like, my God, he's amazing. And truly, I think it's because we started with him at such a young age. So if you're thinking about getting a puppy or you have a puppy, don't feel like you can't travel with them. Of course, it's going to take more of your intentional practice because we're always taking him out on walks and hikes and everything in between. He's not really feeling the need to have accidents inside of the hotel rooms. All of these things really add up, especially if you are mindfully training them from a young age to get ready for traveling. The next one is no barking. It's kind of a no-brainer, but it is so crucial with traveling with your dog so that, you know, if you're going out to dinner and they see another human or another dog, they're not getting easily excitable and barking and stressing you out. Or if you're leaving them alone in your hotel room for a couple hours, they're not barking and going crazy with separation anxiety. So that was something that we really focused on from a young age, was to train Rupert to not bark. The third trainable item on this list is no human food. I know it's super tempting to reward your pet with a little piece of popcorn or a piece of bacon, but for us also specifically because Rupert is so tiny, my fear has always been that he might eat something that would really not agree with him and make him super, super sick. So honestly, even to this day, he's almost 2 years old, he's never really tasted human food, at least not from like our hands. As I'm sure you know, if you're a pet owner, garlic, onions, raisins, grapes, these types of things can kill your dog. So if you train them from a young age to not have any interest in human food, and this goes a long way when you're traveling because there's lots of random food that could be around a restaurant, around your hostel, even around the street, because you never know what's gonna make them sick. And the last thing you want is a visit to the vet in a country where you don't speak the language. And the fourth trainable tip that I like to recommend is socializing your dog heavily. Socializing them with other dogs, big dogs, small dogs, and humans. This went such a long way for Rupert. He's had a lot of experience with all different types of dogs. I wanted to do that also from a really young age because, again, he's so small. I wanted him to learn his size and know that he can't really roughhouse around with a German Shepherd. Also, he's really, really friendly with other dogs and other humans, which is great because it allows us to meet people so much more easily. It ends up helping me learn the language of the country that I'm in a lot more. So definitely socialize your dog from a young age. My final suggestion is to start off small. Don't let your first trip be that huge trip to Panama or that big trip to Portugal. Start out with a weekend trip. Maybe take the train to a different city where it either is a long car ride or even maybe a short flight, maybe an hour flight from Ottawa to Toronto or something like that, to really just test the waters, not only for yours and your pet's relationship, but for yourself too. Maybe you'll pick up something that, hey, okay, I'm glad I learned that. I'm gonna definitely take that with me when we go to Mexico in a month. Just preparation is everything when it comes to traveling in any capacity, with a pet or without. Some of my most amazing memories of life have been with this dog in a different country, so I definitely recommend it. If you're unsure, I really hope that this video has given you some peace of mind for traveling with your dog or cat, whatever it might be, because it can be really easy. You just have to know what to prepare for. And at the end of the day, your pet is your best friend, and it just amplifies your travel experience on such another level, and it just kind of really changes the game of traveling. So I really hope that you found something useful in it. If you did, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know what other tips and tricks you might want to hear from me as someone who travels regularly with their pet. Please like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye for now.